So, in order to cross the river in Saria, we need to convince the river guard that we are townies. And how do we do that? Well, in this house in Saria, we'll find a sleeping bot. If we wake it up, it'll be so afraid that we're here to end its slimy life that it will tell us that its master lives in the woods of the river. If we head to the woods near Medora Swamp, we will find a bunch of action scenes filled to the brim with the rodent like Megmats. Jumpy little freaks! Anyways, on one of these tiles, we will find a cabin, inside of which we will find Bagu. Or you could just skip talking to the bot and just go straight to Bagu's house if you actually know what you're doing, but where's the fun in that? Bagu will hand you a note and tell you to show this to the river guard. Showing the river guard the note will somehow convince him that we're decent enough people and he'll draw up the bridge for us. That seemed entirely arbitrary. How does this guy not recognize us as the hero of Hyrule, the boy who defeated Ganon, but lets us slide if we know some random dude who's living in the woods? I'm stalling, and I know that I'm stalling because the next section of this game is Death Mountain. Death Mountain of Zelda 2 is one of the most ridiculous difficulty spikes that gaming has ever known. You have to go through a gauntlet of caves that are filled to the brim with some of the most difficult enemies that we have encountered thus far. If you haven't gotten one yet, you are very likely to receive a game over in this section, which is what happens when you run out of lives because, yeah, this Zelda game needed lives. When you get a game over, you are eerily told that Ganon has returned and he sits there and laughs at you. Also, when you press continue, you respawn at the North Castle, and all your progress on experience has been reset because I just needed more reasons to hate this game. This is right around the time most players go from, man, why is this game so hated? It isn't so bad, to, oh, now I get it. And this isn't even something you're directed towards following the second dungeon. It is something you are likely to stumble across after completing the first dungeon. I just skipped it because, dude, are you kidding me with this? When I said game over sent you back to the North Castle, I meant that. It doesn't matter if you are 99% of the way through Death Mountain. If you get a game over, you gotta go through it all over again. And did I mention that it's a maze? Because, yes, of course it's a maze. Anyways, after you crawl through a literal definition of hell, you'll come to an area that might seem a bit familiar. For those of you that are more astute, you might be able to recognize that the shape of this area matches the map of the original Legend of Zelda. Yes, this is where the first game took place. All the events of the first game were in this corner of the greater Hyrule. Really puts things in perspective, huh? Anyways, as we head over to Spectacle Rock, we'll notice that one of the rocks is missing. Westy, why do you pronounce it spectacle? Because I'm smarter than you and only learned of this word by reading it. I also have the weirdest Mandela effect when it comes to this geographical figure that it was Spectacle Rock as compared to Spectacle Rock, as those were two different words in the universe I originate from. One of the words described a spectacular view, and the other referred to glasses. I swear that there were two different ways to spell this word, and depending on its spelling is how you'd pronounce the word. I even remember people in the Zelda community correcting others when they used the wrong spectacle to describe this mountain as it was Spectacle Rock. But obviously, these are all just false memories, and I'm just too stubborn to change my ways. Anyways, as we head into Spectacle Rock, we will eventually find what we needed to come all the way through Death Mountain for a hammer. You gotta be kidding me. We went through all of that for a hammer? Not even a magical hammer, just a hammer. What, were we too good to go to the hardware store? Anyways, what can we do with this hammer? Well, we can break rocks with it, which allows us to break back into Ganon's old lair from the first game and find another magic jar. It also allows us to open up more paths to continue our adventure, which we can also do by just walking the side path all the way up to a giant graveyard. Man, what atrocities were committed here. But we can also find the King's Tomb, which is neat, I guess. More confirmation that the children of men die. Whee! Near the graveyard, we will find the harbor town of Mido, where we can find a church, which, if we break into, we find a man who teaches us how to downward stab. Not necessarily what I was expecting to learn in Sunday school today. Boy, this would have come in handy in Death Mountain. Glad we only get it after we get through Death Mountain. Anyways, we can also find this man who tells us that we should go speak to Error of Ruto. Yes, the man who claims I am Error is actually named Error, which I'm going to bet that an insane amount of people tried pointing that out to me in the comments as if I didn't already know. It is currently April 8th, 2025, as I am writing this, and I knew all along. Feel free to mock these people for being behind the curve. Anyways, as we head back to Rudo to talk to Error, be sure to open up a few caves that were blocked by rocks, and you can find another heart container and a weird water of life. Once we meet with Error, he tells us to head south of King's Tomb. You're telling me I had to walk all the way across Hyrule to be told to walk south of the place I just came from? Anyways, on our way back to the King's Tomb, be sure to stop off in Mido to hand off the Water of Life to an old woman in purple. She invites you inside where a wizard teaches you how to become a fairy, which is necessary for 4 parts of this game. Anyways, as we head on over to King's Tomb and then head south from there, you'll eventually fall into a series of blue stripes, where you will land inside of a cave where you need to use the fairy spell you just got to fly up to the exit, which is located on a random island. Which is the first time the fairy spell is needed. Wait until you see when it is needed again. And on this random island, there is the Island Palace. Welcome to the reddest palace of them all. There's not much interesting here, except for this part where you actually go above ground onto land for a bit. Oh, we got blue iron knuckles now, who can fire sword beams at you that will hurt you, unlike how yours fares against them. Somewhere in this dungeon, you'll find a raft, because we couldn't be bothered to bring the one we had in the first game along with us. I'm not salty, you are. Anyways, eventually we'll come to the boss chamber. Who isn't here? You know, it's a bit rude not to greet your guests when they randomly burst into your house. But we don't have to wait long as the boss comes charging in at us on horseback. This is Rebenak, or just another Iron Knuckles. I'm not joking, he is just known as Iron Knuckles in some circles. Isn't it a bit odd that one of the bosses in this game is just a common enemy? I normally agree with this sentiment, but if anything, it just goes to show how unforgiving this game is when the boss of the third dungeon is a common enemy type. All you gotta do to defeat Rebenak is stab him in his head. Not sure why that's a common theme in this game, but I'll roll with it. It's easiest to accomplish this by downward thrusting as he charges by. Thrust, thrust, thrust. Eventually, your thrusting will weird out the horse enough to cause it to abandon its rider, and all you're left with is a typical Iron Knuckles fight. Once you defeat Rebenak, he dies, drops a key, and then we can move on and put the third crystal into the third statue. Halfway there.